Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. And I'm Jim Inkster, your moderator. Governor John Bel Edwards is here to host his ninth Ask the Governor show. And as Michelle Southern said, your number, if you'd like to participate, toll free throughout the state and beyond, is 877-217-5757. We're 4 days before Christmas, and the governor, of course, is getting ready for the holidays, as I'm sure our audience is. And Governor Edwards, has been quite a year for you.
It has, and it's been a challenging year, but a rewarding year, I'll tell you. And I'm just so privileged to be in the position so that I can be governor of this great state. And I am reminded every day when I encounter people in Louisiana just what a great state we have. And I also want to thank all of our listeners for joining us this year. Since April, when we started this show, I asked the governor, we've actually expanded our listeners to 28 stations across the state. And I enjoy every month that we get to spend time talking to each other, and I appreciate all of those who've taken time to call in to the show. And despite the challenges we faced, I tell you, Jim, I'm extremely proud of the progress that we've made this year. I'm optimistic about the future of our state. In fact, I've never been more optimistic than I am now, but I'm certainly mindful of the challenges that we have to overcome going forward. We're going to work to continue to stabilize our budget. We're going to reform our tax code so that we can reinvest in our infrastructure and education, and also enact meaningful budget reforms so that spending decisions are smart and responsible. And I'm also going to work to make sure that the 363,000 working Louisiana uh, people who benefited from health insurance coverage through Medicaid expansion are able to keep that coverage. I ran for governor to put Louisiana first, and as we head into 2017, I'm going to continue to do just that, because the people of Louisiana expect and deserve it. And also, I just want to wish you, Jim, and all of your listeners and all the folks around the state a wonderful and Merry Christmas, and I hope that 2017 will be the best year ever for you and your family, and certainly for our state.
Well, it's been a tough year in many ways, but one that has kept you busy, and the challenges have been immense. But do you feel like we as a state have come through this reasonably well?
Oh, I do. I'm proud. You know, when we started in office on January the 11th, there was a general fund shortfall of $1 billion just to get through June the 30th. And for the year that started July 1st, the shortfall was $2 billion, the largest deficits ever faced in the state of Louisiana. And certainly that presents tremendous challenges. But working with the people of the state, working with the legislature and others, we were able to stabilize our budget and do it in a way that is always painful when you're talking about raising revenue, but it's also painful with the cuts. And we took a balanced approach. We raised revenue, we made strategic cuts, and we actually saved some money. The Medicaid expansion I talked about a while ago saved right at $184 million, almost 10% of that state general fund shortfall. So we took a balanced approach, and I'm pleased overall with the way things turned out. But I am mindful that on July 1st, 2018, about 2/3 of the revenue we raise falls off the books. And so we have to take advantage of this fiscal session that starts in April of 2017 to do that long-term structural tax reform, to make sure that we're successful going forward and we stabilize our state and put ourselves firmly on the path to prosperity.
Is there a sentiment in the legislature that is acceptable to raising revenue?
Well, first of all, the legislature, by and large, works in good faith with me, both the House and the Senate, Republicans and Democrats. There are always going to be some who would prefer to do nothing. They are a distinct minority. Now, we don't really have to raise a lot of new revenue. I think there's going to have to be some of that. I mean, we didn't even fund the TOPS program fully this year, for example. We also know that we're $300 million short or thereabouts in the current year because revenue projections were that far off. But by and large, the focus is not going to be on raising new revenue. It's going to be replacing the revenue stream that we currently have with a permanent stream of revenue and creating a structure that is fair, that's stable and predictable, and also sufficient. One of the things we have to do, and the task force report showed this as well, we've got to get rid of that extra penny of sales tax, but you also have to replace it, and that's going to be the difficult part. But we do have the benefit of that task force report. That task force was created, as you know, Jim, as a result of a negotiated compromise between me and the legislature, because they wanted a task force to study these issues and make recommendations. And I believe that now that they've made those recommendations, we're going to be able to move forward. I'm not naive. It's going to be very difficult. But we gave the legislature an opportunity last year. If they wanted to take a cuts-only approach, they could have done that. At the end of the day, they didn't recommend any cuts that I hadn't already identified. And so we're not going to cut our way to prosperity. We do have to continue to stabilize and do better going forward. And I think we have that opportunity, and I believe we're going to be successful.
Last time we were together, you mentioned the disappointment in the TOPS will not be fully funded in the spring. And as we move forward, some have concerns that this could be a permanent situation. Is this a one-time problem, or is this something that will carry on for months, years, as far as we could see?
Well, last year I proposed a plan to the legislature that would have fully funded TOPS. It is a $300 million a year program, fully funded. At the end of the day, there were $210 million appropriated for that program, leaving a $90 million shortfall, which, as you know, was put on the back end. So it's taken effect for the most part right now as kids and families get ready for that spring semester, and that's when the pain is being felt. I'm going to put forward a plan to the legislature again when I introduce the executive budget proposal. Jay Darden and I, my commissioner of administration, we're going to go to the House Appropriations Committee. We're going to give them my executive budget proposal, and we're going to give them a plan that will fully fund TOPS, and we're going to work with them to implement that plan. It's my expectation that we're going to be successful, and I've been contacted by hundreds of parents across the state who are very distressed over the fact that TOPS is not fully funded at present. I think we can do better. It's a very important program, and I'm certainly not throwing in the towel. I'm not saying that because it was cut to 70% in the current year that needs to be the funding level going forward. We have to do better than that, and we have to honor our commitments to these young people who met the standard we set for them in order to earn TOPS, and now they need to have the benefits that the TOPS program confers upon them.
Last Saturday was an election, and in Louisiana we elected John Kennedy to the Senate, Clay Higgins and Mike Johnson to the House. You've met with these gentlemen. Were you surprised at all at the outcome?
No, I wasn't surprised at the outcome on any of the three races. And, of course, I know two of the gentlemen pretty well and have for a number of years, those being Congressman-elect Johnson and Senator-elect Kennedy. I did meet Clay Higgins yesterday for the first time when all three of those individuals, plus Congressman Garrett Graves, and then the staffs from all of the other folks in our congressional delegations met with us at the state capitol to talk about our ongoing recovery needs as it relates to the floods of 2016 and the plan going forward to get more recovery funding out of Congress and to give them an update on where we are. And so I had a very good, productive meeting with all of those individuals, and I look forward to working with them. And I certainly congratulated them on their election.
Something apparently is going on with the electorate when an outsider like Captain Higgins can defeat a very popular politician in his home area, Scott Angel, who you got to know last year. How do you explain that?
Well, I don't know that I have the explanation for it. This has been a very strange, 2016 has been a strange year politically across the country. And I think we've seen a very unconventional campaign waged by a very unconventional candidate in Donald Trump, who was successful. So it can't be terribly surprising that Clay Higgins was successful in Louisiana. He, too, was a rather unconventional candidate and ran an unconventional campaign. And certainly I wish Scott well. Scott has served the state well for a number of years, and I'm not sure what's in the future for him, but I do wish him well and look forward to meeting with him again soon.
This is Jim Inkster. Thank you for joining Ask the Governor. Governor John Bel Edwards is here to entertain your questions, and if you get a busy signal, be patient. We're going through a few callers, and we'll get to you as quickly as we can. Your number, again, toll-free, is 877-217-5757. Janet in New Orleans. Good afternoon, Janet. You're on Ask the Governor.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for taking my call. And first of all, Mr. Governor, I'd like to wish you a happy holidays to your family from ours, and thank you so much for your leadership, especially on Medicaid expansion.
Thank you,
My
Janet.
my question pertains to the Charity Hospital building in New Orleans and the abandoned ancillary buildings. Do you have any plans as to what to do with those buildings? The Cures Act that passed last week presents new viable opportunities for potential redevelopment, and I'm just wondering how we contact the state to submit proposals.
Well, Janet, first of all, Merry Christmas to you too, and I hope you've enjoyed listening to Aaron Neville as I have. I like him a lot, especially around Christmas time. With respect to the old Charity Hospital building in New Orleans, it is obviously a very important building in New Orleans. It's an iconic building, and there are some historical preservation interests that have to be maintained there. We do not at present have a specific plan for the redevelopment, reutilization of that building. However, we are going to be moving forward because the state owns that building, and we're going to be looking for the best way for that building to be repaired, put back into commerce to serve the people of Louisiana. And there's a lot of different proposals out there. At present, I'm not aware that any one approach has been recommended to me. In fact, I know that it hasn't been. But what I will do is I'm going to find out more about where we are. And what I'd ask you to do is stay on. Shauna's going to get your information. We will find out where we are on that particular building, and we will call you back and let you know.
All right, and I think we disconnected Janet, so call back and we will give you whatever pertinent information the governor's staff has. 877-217-5757 is your number if you'd like to join Governor John Bel Edwards on his show, Ask the Governor. Julie in Baton Rouge. Good afternoon, Julie.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much for taking my call. And Governor, it's such an honor to speak with you.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you. I am an educator, and I'm 64 years old, and of course I'm entertaining the thought of retiring soon. One of the dilemmas I face is I worked in the private sector for many years and paid in all of my Social Security quarters. Of course, Louisiana joined with other states in the WEPS program, which, of course, takes a small section of workers and actually unfairly denies them the full extent of their Social Security. It's going to affect my lifestyle very seriously. I'm wondering what your position is in Louisiana's possibly maybe the possibility of repealing their participation in this program, if that is possible. And also, I guess you are aware it's not just teachers. I think it also affects firefighters, police officers, and other civil workers.
Julie, you're exactly right about that. In fact, my mother is a retired state worker. She was a nurse. And as such, she does not get Social Security benefits, and in fact, doesn't get the benefits that my dad earned prior to his death either. And I understand that from your perspective and from the perspective of many people, it is entirely unfair. But that windfall elimination provision is in federal law. It's not in state law. And I will tell you that any change has to occur there. Bills are filed in every Congress to do that. They never move forward in any way because of the cost associated with it. And so I don't want to, in this conversation, give you hope or let you think that is false, or to make you think it's an easier problem to solve than it really is. And I apologize, but the one thing I can tell you that I will do as your governor is I'm going to protect the pension systems that we have. We're going to continue to reform and strengthen them, but we're going to continue on with a defined benefits plan, and I'm going to make sure that when possible, we are going to grant COLAs in a very responsible fashion.
Barbara in Pineville. Thank you, Julie. Barbara, good afternoon. You're on Ask the Governor.
Hello, Governor. I'm glad to be able to talk to you. I'm also a retiree and have the same problem the lady had. I worked for 25 years publicly, and I did not get my Social Security because I had worked for the state. But I called to talk to you about TOPS. I don't really understand it. I want to know if it is like a full scholarship. I know it doesn't pay the whole bill, but is it something that the students don't have to pay back?
That is correct. If you meet certain academic standards in high school, and that includes your grade point average, but it also includes an ACT score, but you have to take a certain curriculum that prepares you for college. And if you take that curriculum, earn that grade point average, that ACT score, you then get a top scholarship. Now, the intent of TOPS is to pay 100% of tuition. That is the program. There are still some fees that TOPS does not pay, but that program grew in cost over the years from about $60 million a year at its inception to $300 million per year now. And that's driven because over the last decade, as we disinvested in higher education in terms of state general fund support, the universities raised their tuition in most cases by 10% every single year. And so the cost of tuition went up, and that drives up the cost of the program. Now, I am committed to producing a plan, giving it to the legislature, working with them to make sure that we honor our commitment to our students who have earned their top scholarships so that we can get back to paying 100% of the tuition, whereas today we're paying 70%.
877-217-5757 is your number. Ben in New Orleans. Good afternoon, Ben. You're on Ask the Governor with Governor John Bel Edwards.
Hey, how's it going, Governor?
I'm doing
I'd like
well,
to wish
thank
you. Merry
you.
Christmas. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
go
Ben,
ahead.
I can hear. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was getting an echo. I was just calling. I had a couple things I wanted to ask you about. One thing, like the previous caller was talking about, was TOPS. I know it's a fund, for scholarships and everything, but I've recently moved to Louisiana about 2 years ago. I'm from Tennessee, and in Tennessee we have a lottery scholarship, and I understand Louisiana has a lottery as well. How come Louisiana cannot mimic a system similar to Tennessee using the excess funds from the lottery to create a scholarship fund?
Well, Ben, first of all, thank you for calling in. I appreciate your participation in the program. With respect to the lottery proceeds for the state do, in fact, go to education, just as was promised when the lottery was instituted. It doesn't go specifically to top scholarships, but it does go to education. Now, what I think happened, and the reason some people are not happy with the current arrangement as it relates to the lottery, is the lottery revenues were used to replace general fund dollars that were otherwise already going to education. So at the end of the day, there was no net benefit in funding for education to the extent that people believed. But it is true that the way the law is set up, that lottery proceeds do flow to education, but just not to that particular scholarship program. But as you know, money is fungible, and if you're providing revenues to education, it does help, and it does reduce the cost of the scholarship program, because otherwise tuition would have gone up even further.
James in Longview, Texas. Hi, James. You're on Ask the Governor.
Good afternoon, Governor Edwards, and I just want to wish you both a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and I'll get right to my question. I heard on the news a few days ago about the state of emergency pertaining to the possible contamination of drinking water in the town of St. Joseph and by high levels of copper and lead. My question is, do you expect the federal government to give you any aid as far as rectifying the issue, especially with infrastructure? I believe it's pretty close to the Mississippi River, isn't it?
It is just a stone's throw from the Mississippi River. In fact, the town hall where we had a meeting night before last was just right there on the levee. And James, thank you for following it in Longview. And by the way, one of my most pleasant trips to Texas ever was Thanksgiving Day when I went to College Station and watched the LSU Tigers dismantle the A&M Aggies. I'm not sure if you're an Aggie fan, but Merry Christmas regardless. Look, in St. Joe, it's a very serious problem. On Friday, I issued a public health emergency declaration because of the water quality, which had been poor for a long time, but did not rise to the level of a health emergency but that changed when 2 out of 13 samples tested high for lead. The rest of the samples did not, but because the system is so poorly maintained and in such a state of disrepair, boil advisories were becoming more frequently because the system was losing pressure. And for all of those reasons, and so that we could have the flexibility that we needed to speed up the assistance to the town of St. Joe, I issued the public health emergency declaration. And this is what's going to happen. We already have right at $8 million in the pipeline to St. Joe to drill 2 new wells, to put a new water treatment plant in place, and to replace the distribution lines. The declaration is going to allow the project manager to move much faster. So rather than delivering that project in 18 months, we're going to deliver it in a year. And we are asking for help from the USDA. But in the meantime, we are going to provide all the water that they need for consumption in St. Joe so that the people there are not going to be using the water from that town system.
The first one of 2017 will be appropriately on January 11th, which will be the 1-year anniversary of John Bel Edwards as governor of Louisiana. He won the election last year. Some thought it was a long shot bid, and it certainly was a successful run. But Governor, you've already announced that you're running for 2019. And I would imagine most any kid who grows up in Louisiana at some point wonders about how it would be to be governor of our state.
Well, I know I did as a kid. Truly, when I came to Baton Rouge 9 years ago, I did not have any idea about running for governor. It was only after I spent a number of years in the legislature, became frustrated, disillusioned with the decisions that were being made and how they were being made, that I decided to run. But getting back to your point, I did as a kid think a lot about being governor, and it is a great job. I mean, it's very demanding. There are challenges, and the responsibility is awesome. But, Jim, when they talk about the great state of Louisiana, that is the biggest understatement in the world. The people of our state truly are wonderful, decent, hardworking, generous people. And to have the privilege of being their governor, it's just an awesome experience that I'm enjoying. I don't want to say every single day, because as was mentioned during the news break, that day when on July 17th, when 6 police officers were shot, there was nothing good that day. But just about every other day, I have found some way to have fun, to enjoy it, despite all of our challenges, and probably because of the challenges, I found many days enjoyable as well.
Today it was announced that Louisiana State Police will be equipping troopers with body cameras. You were there. That's certainly a new endeavor.
It's not only new for the state, it's not been done anywhere in the country. This is going to be a statewide effort where about 1,500 of these devices are going to be acquired, and we're going to have state troopers who are going to be wearing these body cameras. That will be integrated into their tasers, ultimately integrated into the camera system in the automobiles as well. And they're going to be on the troopers who are walking in the French Quarter and those who are patrolling in Grant Parish and everywhere in between. No other state in the nation has done that with a statewide program. And so we're excited about it. I tell you what, I believe that if a state trooper is wearing a body camera, he will or she will be reminded to make sure they do things as they were trained to do. And if the people know that there's a camera on that trooper, they will be reminded to interact with the trooper in a way that they should as well. But I think the biggest advantage may come in the training opportunity, so that every interaction with the public, every traffic stop, every arrest made, the supervisor gets to review with the trooper exactly what they did right, what they might have done wrong, and correct them so that it doesn't happen again. And this is in furtherance of my goal to have the best trained, best equipped, most professional law enforcement agency in the country here in Louisiana in our state police.
We've been reading about some challenges in the corrections department in Louisiana. Are you confident we're on the right track as far as getting that department where it should be?
I am, and we are already making tremendous progress. It hasn't really been reported, but the incarceration rate in Louisiana has been going down very slightly, not the way we want it to. But had it stayed on the trajectory it was on about 10 years ago, we would have close to 60,000 people in our correction system today incarcerated. We are nowhere near that. I think we're at about 35,000 instead. It's too high. But Jimmy LeBlanc, as the Secretary of the Department of Corrections, he has worked both the probation and parole side of that and the prison side of that. And he is presiding over a task force that is going to recommend a comprehensive legislative initiative for the April session to adopt in Louisiana those things that have been done elsewhere in other southern conservative states that have proven effective at reducing the incarceration rate, improving public safety, saving money, all at the same time. And we can do that in Louisiana. We have to. Jim, we're spending $600 million a year on the Department of Corrections, third only to education and health care. We can do better. We have to do better. And we have a confluence of different things happening right now. It's not just that the people of Louisiana are not innately more sinister or criminal than those elsewhere, and we just shouldn't be incarcerating them at those levels, but the budget doesn't allow us to continue to do it. We simply can't afford it. So we can take the right and the left and come together and chart a better course, and that's exactly what's going to happen in April.
Now, last week there was a report about a raid in your home parish of Tangipahoa. Did that catch you by surprise?
Well, it caught me by surprise, sure. I didn't have any notice of it. And as I sit here, I don't know exactly what the federal officials were going after, what they were trying to learn. I can't tell you why they went and employed the methods that they did. I don't have a clue about that. But what I do have a clue about, what I know, is that my brother Daniel would never do anything improper, much less illegal. I have no doubt in my mind that that's true, and I have no fear that that's ever going to be contradicted. I'm the seventh of 8 children. He was the 8th of 8. We did everything together as kids, and certainly continue to have a great relationship with him. And I have the highest confidence in his professionalism and his standards. And so it's unfortunate, but at the end of the day, I know that it's going to come out just fine for him.
877-217-5757 for Governor John Bel Edwards. Stewart in Baton Rouge. Good afternoon, Stewart.
Well, good afternoon, Jim, and as well you, Governor, and of course, a happy, beautiful holiday to you gentlemen and your families.
Thank you, Stewart. Same to you.
Yes, thank you. Governor, you seem to be a very down-to-earth individual. I'd like to thank you for that because, regretfully, I think a lot of politicians forget that they work for and on behalf of the people, and they place themselves on a ridiculous pedestal, thinking that they're above and beyond who they're supposed to be working for and with. Finally, Governor, my topic today is civil service and policemen. I've had the opportunity to speak with a few police chiefs, and they've indicated that it's very difficult to get rid of officers that they would like to get rid of because these individuals are protected by the civil service bureaucracy. And with the turmoil that our country is experiencing with officers, and not many, but one is too many, Governor. When an individual is killed or brutalized unjustifiably, shouldn't we as a society, shouldn't we have graduated to the point where these individuals should no longer be protected by these layers of bureaucracy?
All right. Stewart, I think I get the gist of the question, and thank you for calling in, and I want to wish you a Merry Christmas as well. Civil service performs a very valuable role in making sure that as different office holders are elected, and you started off by commenting about me being down to earth, and I want to thank you for that. But the civil service system came into being because at times in our history and in the history of our country elsewhere, individuals were elected to office and came in and for political reasons engaged in wholesale removal of people and fired them and sent them home, not because they had done anything wrong, not because if, in the case of a police officer, they had made a bad arrest or shot somebody without justification, but simply because of how they voted or what family they came from. And so we have to guard against that as well. And I believe we can have a professional, competent, very well-trained and equipped police force within the civil service system, and in fact, I believe that by and large we do. There is a rare occasion out there. I mean, the overwhelming majority of our police officers at the state, the parish, and the local level perform well every single day. And certainly we have to always continue to improve and get rid of those individuals who don't measure up. What we need to do, I think, is make sure that individuals who are fired from one law enforcement agency cannot simply go right down the road or across the parish line and easily get another job, another badge, be issued another gun, so that they can continue to do the same thing. We're going to be working in that regard, but I'm not prepared to say that the civil service system itself is such an obstacle that it has to be removed in the case of law enforcement officers.
Deborah in Covington. Good afternoon, Deborah. You're on the air with Governor Edwards.
Well, thank you so much, Governor Edwards. And my question is simple but complex. I'd love to see the state of Louisiana lead the way in the war on drugs and not treat mental health as a taboo, and really, I guess in some ways, offer help to these young, anywhere from soccer moms to young kids to older people that are addicted, to give them a rehab opportunity and not.
Deborah, first of all, I couldn't agree with you more, especially as it relates to the mental health needs of our citizenry. For too long, mental illness, I should say, has been a taboo subject. People don't want to talk about it for fear of stigma. It may prevent them from getting or keeping a job. But the fact of the matter is, every family of any size has individuals, one or more, with mental illness. And another thing we have to do is we've got to stop treating the mentally ill as if they're criminals. We shouldn't be putting them in our jails and our prisons only to not give them treatment and not give them access to prescription drugs so that they just get out to end back up in prison or jail again. We have to do better. We are focusing on that on the criminal justice reform, and I'm proud to tell you that the Medicaid expansion has allowed for a behavioral health component of coverage for 365,000 more working people in Louisiana. That too has been a benefit.
This is Jim Inkster. Thank you for listening to Ask the Governor. And we're hearing the voice of Aaron Neville. It's a little hard to compete with him, but Governor Edwards and I will try. 877-217-5757 is your number. 4 days before Christmas. Hope you have a great holiday. And Donna in Walker, you are on Ask the Governor. Donna, good afternoon to you in the lovely hamlet of Walker. There we go. Donna, good afternoon.
How is everyone?
Donna, doing fine. Thank you. I hope you are as well.
I am. Merry Christmas to you both. Governor, I guess this is more of a statement than a question. My son just graduated probably a year ago from Georgia Tech with his master's. He went to Louisiana Tech for his bachelor's and to the Arts, Math, and Science School in Natchitoches for high school, which is an awesome school, if anybody doesn't know about it, that the state of Louisiana provides for gifted high school students. He is back home here with us, and he's trying to find a job, and he's having a hard time, and that's hard for us to understand how someone with his credentials could have a hard time finding a job in our great state. Because, you know, my husband's a Baton Rouge City police officer, so we're not going to leave. Are you looking at ways to bring more jobs to our state or here at home?
Absolutely. And Donna, I don't know what your son's master's degree is in, although I can tell you the three schools that you just mentioned, he is a very well-educated young man, and I have no doubt he would make somebody an excellent employee. Just this morning, I was in Plaquemines Parish and announced an $8.5 billion capital investment in a liquefied natural gas facility by Venture Global that is going to produce 250 full-time jobs with an average pay of $70,000 plus benefits, another 750 indirect jobs, and over the next 4 years while it's under construction, 2,200 temporary jobs. We're working extremely hard to bring jobs to Louisiana, to make sure there's more opportunity for people here. I can tell you that with the coastal restoration efforts that we have and the protection efforts and the dollars that we have available, although they're not sufficient to meet every demand that we have, and we're not going to be able to fund every project we would like to construct, but there's going to be an awful lot of jobs there. We are doing everything we can with our community technical college system to make sure that individuals have the education and training necessary to fill the jobs that are going to come. And in fact are here in Louisiana, and one of the best spots in the entire country, in the entire state in terms of employment is right here in the Baton Rouge area. And so I believe there are opportunities out there, and I would encourage your son not to give up because things are getting better from an employment perspective in Louisiana. Where it remains very tight is down in the Houma, Thibodaux area and then moving west. But we have turned the corner. We're doing better, and I would encourage your son to remain engaged and certainly want to offer him whatever assistance I can.
Thank you, Donna. Cedric in Covington. Cedric, good afternoon. You're on Ask the Governor.
Hey, I just wanted to ask, given Louisiana's extreme incarceration rate, and how most of the people in jail seem to be in there for nonviolent drug crimes, what steps, will you be taking, Governor, towards, more fair penalties for people?
Well, Cedric, obviously not everybody who is in jail or prison is there for a nonviolent offense, but you're entirely correct that too many of the people who are in prison in Louisiana and in jail are there for nonviolent property crimes and drug crimes. And I would just ask you and the others to consider this. Our crime rate in Louisiana is about the same as South Carolina and Florida, but South Carolina, we put twice as many people in prison as they do, and 3 times as many as in Florida. If I remember the facts correctly, and I may be slightly off, but it's something on that order of magnitude. What we have to do is follow the recommendations that are going to come from a task force. And these strategies are all going to be things done successfully in other southern conservative states like Texas, South Carolina, and Georgia. One is we need to allow judges to be judges again, especially in those nonviolent cases, so that we don't have mandatory minimum sentences that prevent them from exercising discretion. We need to make sure that there are pretrial diversion programs that are out there, that we have specialty courts. Right now we have drug courts and there are veteran courts, and we need to do that around the state so that individuals are given an opportunity when it's appropriate, and always having the district attorneys on board, but when it is appropriate, have them work a plan where they get help, where they do community service, where they check in over an extended period of time, and if they are successful, rather than getting a criminal record that is going to prevent them from being gainfully employed and supporting themselves and their family, they get that criminal conviction that almost ensures that they're not going to be able to support themselves and their families, and that rather than being taxpayers, they're going to be tax consumers. We can do so much better. We are going to do better. And I ran for governor saying that at the end of my time in office, we would not have the highest incarceration rate in the nation. And I insist that we are going to be successful.
Cleveland and Lafayette. Good afternoon, Cleveland. You're on the air with Governor John Bel Edwards.
How you doing this evening?
Fine.
I was calling early. Y'all were talking about TOPS earlier, and I've always wondered. I used TOPS whenever to graduate through LSU, and I was always wondering why not convert TOPS to a loan program that is forgiven to a student that graduates. Because I've seen people that qualify for TOPS drop out after 3 semesters, and that's TOPS money that went wasted. And I've seen people that did qualify for TOPS work their tail off and were able to graduate without the help. And if you had it in a loan-based situation, it would reward the people that actually graduate with them.
Well, Cleveland, first of all, thank you for calling in, and I think it's pretty interesting that we got someone named Cleveland calling from Lafayette. But with respect to your question, I was in the legislature for 8 years before becoming governor, all of which were on the Education Committee in the House of Representatives. And this proposal came up a number of times. And if memory serves me, we have a prohibition in Louisiana against giving things away. So if it's going to be a loan program, you can't forgive it. I don't think the Constitution allows us to do that. And so you have to have a program where it's a scholarship from the beginning. And there may be some ways around that. I know that many people have this idea. It's been advanced in legislation, and I'm trying to. It has been done in several years, and I'm trying to remember the exact reason why the legislation was unsuccessful. But I believe it has to do with the fact that if you're going to call it a loan at the outset, that you don't have the legal ability to then forgive it.
Carol in New Orleans. Hello, Carol. You're on the air with the governor.
Hi, good afternoon, Governor. I'm so glad you got elected. That's a truck. And I wanted to ask, the question I want to ask is, why can't 100% of the Louisiana lottery go to education and teacher salaries?
Well, Carol, first of all, I'm not sure, as I sit here today, I can't remember what percentage of the lottery goes to education, and specifically within those dollars, how they are spent. What I did investigate a while back was whether the lottery supports education in Louisiana to the extent that was represented to the people when they instituted the lottery here. And I can tell you that it does. Now, it would be possible to go and revisit that and make sure potentially that more of the money went to those areas with teacher salaries and so forth. But I can tell you, Carol, money is fungible. And so if all you do is dedicate one source of revenue to go to a certain expenditure, a lot of times what will happen is the other dollars going to that expenditure item are then reduced. And so you don't end up making a net gain. And so long as we have these tremendous budgetary pressures that we currently have in Louisiana, it's going to be very, very difficult, I think, to enact the types of things that you're suggesting. But I will go back because it's been a while since I looked at the lottery. I'm going to find out how much of that actually goes to education, and then within education, exactly where it goes. And Carol, if you will give Shauna Sanford your information, she's hanging on the line. We will get that information right back to you.
Well, Governor, this does it for another show. Hope you and Donna and your family have a good holiday, and thanks for doing the show, and we'll be back on January 11th.
Well, thank you, Jim, and to all the listeners out there, Merry Christmas, and I'm hopeful and prayerful that 2017 will be the best year ever for you and your families and for our great state.
Well, until